straight into the roof of the net. Nice one. Straight down the middle. So a good performance from both.
Hi, I'm Rupha Ramani and you're watching Firstpost. Let's get started. Now, there are two contrasting tales that we will tell you here today on the show. One is of a youngster who has fought all odds, the biggest of hurdles that life could possibly throw at anyone, to emerge a world beater. You don't want to miss this story. And the second is the fall from grace of a country's cricketing tradition, how from the pedestal of greatness they have hit rock bottom and are struggling to emerge out of the mess they find themselves in today. All of that lined up on the show today, but we also recall the genius that is Mad Max. But first, a look at all the headlines on Sports 360. Reports say Virat Kohli is all set to miss out on white ball cricket during India's tour of South Africa. The tour begins on the 10th of December, starting with a 3-match T20 series followed by a 3-match ODI series. It will finally conclude with a 2-test series that he will take part in, which is part of the WTC cycle. After India's recent loss at the World Cup final, there have been speculations about Kohli and Rohit's future in the shorter format of Indian cricket. Rahul Dravid will continue to be the head coach for the Indian cricket team at least till the next World Cup. BCCI has extended his contract, which was supposed to end at the 2023 ODI World Cup. He will guide the men in blue at least till the T20 World Cup next year. This after reports of his reluctance to stay on. There was also reports that said Ashish Nehra was approached, and after he refused, they extended Dravid's contract. Pakistan's cricket board is stuck in a deadlock with the Asian Cricket Council. It has demanded additional compensation from the ACC, this for organising chartered flights between Pakistan and Sri Lanka for the 2023 Asia Cup, which was co-hosted by both the countries. ACC says it won't pay PCB since they agreed to the hybrid model setup. On to the Champions League. Manchester City claimed the top spot with 15 points after 5 games as they beat RB Leipzig 3-2 in the Group G of the Champions League. City's Julian Alvarez scored in the 87th minute as European champions clawed their way back from 2 goals down. Erling Haaland and Phil Foden also netted in the second half. Haaland also became the fastest player to score 40 Champions League goals. The Paris Saint-Germain versus Newcastle United thriller ended in a 1-1 draw after Kylian Mbappe scored a penalty in the 98th minute. Rescuing his side, Mbappe's last-gasp penalty keeps PSG in a position to qualify for the last 16 in the Champions League and leaves Newcastle United in serious danger of a group stage exit. Now, we start the show today with a saga. It involves a country and its cricket board. Now, where have we heard this before? This drama that has all the ingredients of a catchy web series. Poor performance on the field, power struggles off the field, the cricket board being dissolved, membership of the International Cricket Council being suspended, claims of assassination attempts being made by the sports minister. Yes, assassination attempts, only for him to be sacked by the president within hours of making that statement. Sounds quite dramatic and nearly unbelievable, right? It indeed is quite the story, and no, I'm not talking about Pakistan. Welcome to Sri Lanka cricket. The island nation is going through a turbulent patch. We'll get to how and why of it. But first, let us get you up to speed with the latest. Meet Roshan Ranasinghe. He's the former sports minister of Sri Lanka. Ranasinghe was sacked from his post on Monday. Why? Because the ex-minister accused the president of Sri Lanka, Ranil Wickremesinghe, of trying to assassinate him.
I fear I could be killed over my work to clean up the cricket board. If I am assassinated on the road, the president and his chief of staff will be responsible.
Now, that's quite a tall claim. The president didn't respond to these allegations. Instead, he removed the sports minister promptly after this statement. Clearly a sign that all is not well. But how did things get to this point? And what does it have to do with Sri Lankan cricket? The answer lies in how closely politics and sport are linked and intertwined in Sri Lanka. It started with Sri Lanka's poor campaign at the World Cup in the match against India. The Lankan Lions were bundled out for 55. This came, of course, at the heels of a very horrid display in the Asia Cup final in front of their home fans. Eventually, they finished 9th on the points table at the World Cup, just ahead of Netherlands, which also means they missed the qualifications for the Champions Trophy. On expected lines, heads rolled in Colombo. The sports minister accused the board of corruption and called for them to resign. The Sri Lankan Cricket Board demanded answers from the team, the coach, chief selector, just about everyone as to why and how things went so horribly wrong. It even put a statement saying that team's performance in the World Cup raised questions about their preparations or the lack of it. Then the board's secretary put in his resignation. Things only escalated from there. Sports Minister Ranasinghe stepped in. He dissolved the cricket board unilaterally and got an interim committee in place to look into the SLC's future. The committee was led by this man, Arjuna Ranatunga, Sri Lanka's World Cup winning captain, a legendary figure in the country. Now, just a side note, laws in Sri Lanka allow the sports minister to make such interferences. But for the minister to have actually gone ahead and taken this step was considered very extreme. A power struggle followed. President Wickremesinghe said the sports minister's move was unilateral and that the government wasn't taken into confidence. The matter pertaining appointment of the committee went to the court as well. Amidst all this, the International Cricket Council, or the ICC, stepped in. It took cognizance of this intervention by the government and ended up suspending SLC's membership.
The ICC board met today and determined that Sri Lanka cricket is in serious breach of its obligations as a member. In particular, the requirement to manage its affairs autonomously and ensure that there is no government interference in the governance, regulation and/or administration of cricket in Sri Lanka. After hearing representation from SLC, the ICC board decided that Sri Lanka can continue to compete internationally both in bilateral cricket and ICC events after being suspended recently for breaching its obligations as a member.
That was the politics of it. But there are larger questions that this incident raises. Where does all of this chaos leave the team? Does it have a bearing on their performance on the field? And more importantly, where does this leave the system? The board that is expected to have absolute control over cricketing affairs. You see, in recent years, the Lankan Cricket Board has found itself in a pickle quite a few times. The charges, from corruption, unfair elections, officials allegedly engaging in gambling to excess interfering by governments. The board has been in the thick of all of this. In fact, the sports minister of Sri Lanka in 2018 himself admitted to this. Haran Fernando, who was the sports minister back then, said the ICC showed a confidential report to him. The report stated the SLC administration is corrupt from top to bottom. Whichever way you look at it, all of these controversies do have a bearing on the players and the team. If you don't have a stable backroom in place, you cannot get the right team to pick the right squad and ensure everything goes as per plan on the field. And it shows in the performances. Sri Lanka hasn't won a major ICC tournament since the 2014 T20 World Cup. That's almost a decade now. Following the retirement of stalwarts like Mahela Jayawardene, Kumar Sangakkara, Lasith Malinga, the list is endless. In the last decade or so, the Sri Lankan management has really found it tough to build a solid core. Imagine you're a Sri Lankan fan growing up watching the likes of Ranatunga, Chaminda Vas, Sanath Jayasuriya and Muthai Muralidharan to now even struggling to field a proper playing 11. Not just that, the chaos in the system also affects the overall functioning of the board. What do we mean? You see, running a cricket board is an expensive affair. You have to have sufficient money to build infrastructure, groom players for the future, pay salaries, rope in sponsors and fans. In the last couple of years, Colombo has faced a severe economic crisis as well, and that has had its ripple effect on the board too. But if you have a stable leadership, you can navigate through difficult waters. Sample this. In 2022, Sri Lanka cricket recorded a profit of 6.3 billion compared to rupees 2.1 billion in 2021. It's the highest ever. That's a threefold increase in revenue. Where did the money come from? The board says there are four main sources: domestic and international games, sponsorship, and ICC's disbursements. Imagine the things one can do with that sort of profit. Get a proper system in place where you can scout solid domestic talent, groom them so that they're good enough to play for the country. Who knows? Maybe take a cue from their neighbor, India, and the domestic setup it has. Or even ramp up the infrastructure, make the stadiums friendly for both players and fans. But clearly, at the moment, Sri Lankan cricket has more questions thrown at them than hold the answers. And the fans would desperately hope that there is light at the end of a very dark tunnel. Now, it's been 10 days since the ICC World Cup ended, but the hangover is still not over. The two finalists are currently engaged in a 2020 international series. Yesterday's match saw Glenn Maxwell turn the innings into a personal net session. After Marcus Stoinis departed, the match in Guwahati yesterday went down to the wire. It was Maxwell everybody was counting on. It's during these times when he unleashes his beast mode. His aggressive batting during the third T20 might have reminded many of you of that impressive double hundred at the World Cup. I reckon this T20 international series also mirrors how the Aussies started their World Cup campaign and were back on their feet as it progressed. Maxwell single-handedly ensured Australia's dreams of winning this T20 series is still alive. For me, it doesn't matter who wins the series. When players deliver standout performances, it creates moments that goes beyond the overall result of a tournament.
If there was a lesson on how to thrive under pressure, it should be Glenn Maxwell who should be giving it. The third T20 international match between India and Australia was held yesterday, and this Aussie big show snapped India's two-match winning streak. During the match, what he unleashed was a sight to behold. India put up a target of over 200 runs during their innings, but Maxwell's record equaling fourth T20 100 in the game helped Australia beat India by 5 wickets to stay alive in the 5-match T20 international series. In doing so, he also joined Indian skipper Rohit Sharma at the top for the most T20 international centuries in men's cricket. Maxwell now has 4 centuries in 92 innings. Rohit Sharma has 4 in 140 innings. His previous T20 International 100 was also against India in 2019. He's continuing his explosive form that was last seen at the World Cup here as well, that impressive double century at Wankhede. And now a smashing 100 off just 47 balls. It seems like he's far from being done. Here's what former Australian cricketer Mike Hussey said about his knock during Australia's match against Afghanistan at the World Cup.
It's got to go down as one of the greatest of all time. Whether it's the greatest, we can argue that probably for the next year. I think the only argument I'd put forward was that, say Ricky Ponting made a massive 100 in a World Cup final to help Australia win. Adam Gilchrist made 149 in a World Cup final. Does that make the more special? I don't know, but I'll tell you what, it's got to be right up there with one of the greatest performances of all time.
Maxwell's ability to turn the game in Australia's favour when they need it the most makes him the go-to player for the squad. The Aussies needed 21 runs in the last over yesterday, a task which could have intimidated even the bravest. But Maxwell's composure, combined with his aggressive batting style, allowed him to achieve the seemingly daunting task.
It was his 100th game today as well, and I think that's a really special moment for him. He's been one of our best players that's ever played, and I'm sure he wanted to make it a winning one, and he did it himself.
His inconsistent run during IPLs may have raised doubts on how reliable he is as a middle-order bat who can roll the arm too. But when he dons his national jersey, all those challenges seem to vanish. When it comes to his national team, he shows a different level of consistency. The IPL may see a bit of a lopsided version of Glenn Maxwell, but his rivals are always in maximum dilemma facing his onslaught.
India has a new world number 1, and this is a 16-year-old. Yes, she's a teenager and already is on the top of the world. Sheetal Devi. Heard of her? If you haven't, then you simply must stick on. But if you have, then you will get to know a little more about the Wonder Woman from India. Because knowing about her struggles and how she's come up to be a world beater is the perfect story to inspire so many. Is the perfect story that truly symbolizes this new India. The perfect story for our Eyes on Eve's segment today. The India that has revolutionized the sporting landscape and is witnessing the birth and growth of superstars, especially in athletics. The India that said they will notch up more than 100 medals at the Asian Games and went ahead and did just that. Let's get back to Sheetal Devi. She's an archer. When I say this, you would think, all right, that's great. When was the last time India had a number 1 archer? Then I'll tell you she's not just any archer, but a para-archer. And you would think that is incredible. She probably must be having a handicap, but would definitely have the strength and accuracy in her arms to be the best in the world. And then I will tell you that she is an armless world number 1. And that's when your jaws will drop open and you will realize just how awesome the achievement truly is. It's commendable to be a world number one in any sport, but Sheetal has in the truest sense defied all odds to get to where she has.
मेरा कोच जो है कुलदीप वेदवान है, तो उन्होंने ही मुझे आर्चरी सिखाई थी। जब मैं पहली बार आई थी तो मुझे ऐसा लग रहा था कि मैं नहीं कर पाऊंगी, तो उन्होंने मुझे मोटिवेट किया कि तो कर पाएगी, तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा। आज मैंने अपने देश को 3 मेडल दिए, तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा।
She shot to prominence in the Para-Asian Games by securing 3 medals at the Games. Her video of precise, accurate shooting with her legs went viral. She became the first Indian to win 2 golds in a single edition of the Para-Asiad and contributed to a record-breaking performance by India where they won 111 medals, their biggest ever haul till date. Sheetal scored a perfect 10, not once, not twice. She shot 6 consecutive 10 rings in the last 2 rounds at the final of compound and won her first individual gold medal. The story of her success outside the field is just as astounding. Sheetal is from Lodiyar village in Jammu and Kashmir, and she was born with phocomelia. It is a disorder causing underdeveloped limbs. But the disease did not impede her. She spent a lot of her childhood climbing trees for fun. The activity, though, helped in strengthening her upper body and also improved her athleticism. That made scouts notice her talent during a local event organized by the Indian Army in 2021. There were talks of getting a prosthetic arm so that she could venture into the world of sports, but it did not suit her, it did not fit her properly. So Sheetal and her mentors got disheartened, back to square one, thinking this was the end of the road for her dream. But Sheetal did not lose hope and resumed her training under the mentorship of Abhilasha Chaudhary and Kuldeep Vedwan. They in fact drew inspiration from Matt Strudzman, an athlete who had stunned spectators back in 2012 by shooting with her legs. Sheetal was merely 5 years old back then. Little did anyone think that Matt Strudzman laid the foundation for a mega star in India a decade later. They modified Sheetal's releaser into a shoulder releaser and thus forming a string mechanism for her chin and mouth to pull the trigger and release the arrow. It was not exactly the process Matt Strudzman followed, but it worked for Sheetal. Sheetal too built up her stamina daily, increasing the shots she took from 50 a day to nearly 300 daily. 6 months later, she won silver in Panipat at the Para Open Nationals, and then of course came the act that got the world to notice her. Her achievement at Hangzhou at the Para-Asiad. That brought her accolades by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Looking back at her journey, she says there were times when she couldn't even lift the bow properly, but never gave up. This is a story of struggle and achievement like none other. With her condition, we do not know what the future holds, but just going by her determination and her will to succeed, Sheetal stands tall. You can tell that whatever the challenge, she will take it head on. The accolades and appreciations are all pouring in, but this shy 16-year-old who has evaded interviews all along knows how grounded she is, and her feet will do all the talking. That brings us to the end of the show. Here's the last serve or the parting shot for today. When I say bikes and cricket, who comes to your mind? Now, this man has an unspoken love affair with superbikes, and he recently made one die-hard fan of his very, very lucky. Take a look. We know India's Chepauk Stadium will be really gearing up in many months to come to see this man in action once more at the Indian Premier League. But that's all there is today at Firstpost. We hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Till then, bye-bye.